Hi everybody, thank you very much indeed for joining us today on the webinar, and I'm really grateful again for people taking time out to just have a conversation across the trust and to raise anything at all that you want to. At great request from everybody, we are focusing especially today on IT, and any questions that you've got to do with IT, but of course anything else that you want to raise a question about, anything at all, then please do let us know. And as usual, I'm going to tell you in a minute how you can raise questions live, but we have also got some questions that have been pre-submitted. Let me introduce who's on the webinar today. So I'm joined by our chair, Jackie Smith again. Hi, Jackie.
Hi,
and
everyone.
Also Jeff Boateng, who's our Director of Clinical Information Management. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. And Jeff is particularly joining us so that we can answer any of those queries or issues that you want to talk about to do with IT support. Now, as I said, some of you have raised questions in advance and we will take some of those, and thank you very much for doing that. It does really help. But you can also ask questions now during the webinar. You can use the Q&A function on Teams. You'll see it on your screen. Just click on that little Q icon and type in the question. And we will do our best to get through as many of those questions as we can. As usual, if there's a question we can't answer, but we have to go away and find out what the answer is, or if we don't get through them all, I promise we'll put a link to the recording of this webinar in the daily staff update, and we will include those questions that we didn't get to in the actual session, and we'll put the answers, of course. So please don't hold back in any way. As always, I want to start by thanking everybody for everything that you're doing and for the continued sacrifices that you make. I am aware that even though the numbers may have gone down and we may be off peak, there's still a great deal that's going on in our private lives as well as our professional lives, which is stressful and gives us concern. And I am aware that you're working under enormous pressure. In fact, now that the physical peak for COVID has come down, we are seeing much more mental health activity, and I think we're probably at the beginning of our own surge. And I know many of you already experiencing that increased activity. I've been talking to some teams this morning who've been absolutely reflecting that that's the case. You're getting very busy. So thank you so much for managing that demand, for managing that increased activity, the stress that puts on you, whilst continuing to manage all those other balancing acts that you do with difficulties in transport and home life and all those other things. So many thanks. Now, I'm not going to give my usual update on recovery and all those issues, because I think we are fairly up to date, and I don't want to impose on the time that you've asked for to talk about IM&T and support. So I'm going to hand straight over to Jackie so she can start to work through some of the early questions that we've had. But if you've got any questions about wider issues around recovery or testing or any of that, then please raise them, and I'm happy to pick them up through the session. So Jackie, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Angela, and welcome everybody to the webinar. Jeff, it's absolutely great to see you. I can say with confidence you are the most popular man in the trust when it comes to questions. So there are lots of people waiting in eager anticipation for your answers. So let's start with some questions that mute again. Sorry, I'm just going to stick with the technology, having a few problems at the moment. So Jeff, one of the questions is, could you ask why we've been waiting for weeks for certain ICT tasks to be completed for the wards? I have at least 3 jobs that haven't been completed. I understand that we have a COVID crisis, but the ICT department have been slow and not at the standard expected during this time. Jeff, some of the questions are on a similar theme, which is about the slowness that people feel in respect of kit. So if you want to broadly deal with time expectations as well as individual concerns, that will be helpful, Jeff.
Sure, thank you very much, Jackie. So firstly, apologies for any delays that have been encountered by teams across the trust. I think like most teams, I think ICT has been under a lot of phenomenal pressure. And like most teams as well, we have encountered members of staff who have had to self-isolate, for example, and people who have also gone on leave, and also just general sickness across the round. So that has actually impacted on our ability to be as quick as we would have liked to have been. But I am glad to say that we are actually addressing this. We have got additional members of staff coming into the team, and they are making a tremendous difference in terms of really moving things forward and making sure that any open tickets are all getting resolved as quickly as possible. I think there has been a bit of an issue around laptops, which I may touch on later on, but in terms of devices, phones, or anything to do with Wi-Fi or anything like that, we are ready to help with that. So if there is anything outstanding, please do let us know.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. That's very helpful. Now, there's a couple of questions on the use of Zoom. One that's just come in actually on the live questions, which is that Zoom is a better quality. So the question here is, please can the Trust reconsider its decision to stop the use of Zoom? My colleagues and a number of mental health trusts in London continue to use it and inform me that it is possible to make it very safe using particular security settings. It's also used in Parliament at the moment. Zoom provides very good connectivity for video conversations and helps with visibility. And it's certainly useful with clinical work. Now, I know, Jeff, this has been the subject of a conversation over many weeks. So perhaps you can say where we are as an organisation with Zoom, and then what might be the future.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So I appreciate that Zoom is being used in other mental health trusts. I think within CNI, we've had to really weigh up the risks versus the benefits as well. And the risks, I think, at this moment in time really do outweigh the benefits of using Zoom. Part of the issue is most probably what you've heard about in terms of Zoom bombing and the gravity of material that is shared when a Zoom bombing attack actually happens within a video conference or a meeting or something that's happening along those lines. So I think as an organization, because of the risk, we can't really permit the use of Zoom internally. But we have heard the concerns that a lot of people have raised. So there is a piece of work that is being led by myself and Dr. Loreen Hanna to look at alternative platforms that we could use to aid clinical work, as well as for meetings and every other use that may be required. So that work is actually developing at pace. And we have identified one or two platforms already that we think would be able to give us the same kind of capability as Zoom, but obviously not using the Zoom tool. And some of the platforms that we've actually identified could also potentially interface with Microsoft 365 as well, which will give us added benefits. So I think there will be some comms coming out later on in relation to the work that's going on in terms of video conferencing. But as it stands at the moment, I think the risks around Zoom do outweigh quite a bit the benefits. Thank you.
Okay, that's really helpful, Jeff. And obviously, we've got to think about safety and security of everyone when using something like Zoom. One of the other questions that's come in from Heston Hassett: why can't Windows 10 update be done remotely, Jeff?
That's a really good question. So I think there's a number of reasons why it can't be done remotely, and it relates to the actual devices that people are using. So Windows 10 does use 8 GB of RAM, and a lot of the Trust devices, the laptops that we have, are currently using 4 GB of RAM. So we are actually going to have to upgrade the memory just so that it can actually host Windows 10 on the device. That's unfortunately something that we can't really do remotely. So we are going to have to get laptops in that have the old memory amounts, and then upgrade them, refurbish them, and send them back out. The good news on laptops is we have received 250, which is currently with our delivery partners in York, and it's all being configured, ready for us to use. I'm expecting at least 120 of those to arrive by Monday, and then we can start to farm that out to all of the teams and everybody who needs it. But at the same time, we'll be doing an exercise to collect all the previous machines that people are using and upgrade those to send those back out again.
Okay, that's really good news, Jeff. I suspect lots of people will be in touch with you from Monday onwards.
I think so.
Someone here has asked about connectivity problems, Jeff. They've said that they're fortunate enough to have a work laptop at home, but they spend quite a bit of time dealing with connection problems when using Pulse or Global Project. IT have told them that there's little that can be done about this at the moment. Do you know when the issues might be resolved?
So recently we did have an issue with Pulse, and that's when we initiated the Global Protect upgrade. I think connectivity is quite a sensitive issue because a lot of it relates to the type of broadband connections people also have at home. And because of the way we're all working remotely, you tend to find that at specific points in the day, connectivity literally just drops. And this is something that's being faced by most organizations across the board that are initiating remote working. So the peak times, for example, between 9 and 11 o'clock, connection tends to be quite a problem in a number of areas. So I think you tend to find that in terms of trying to get in, the issue isn't necessarily there, but it's about trying to maintain that connection initially, and that's not necessarily something that's within the trust control. So all I can suggest is maybe if you could just keep persevering and keep trying to get in, or it might be a case of you just look at the times at which you're trying to log in, because that might be a contributing factor as well.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. There's one here which says that community staff are now having to work from home with little or no IT equipment. They have to do this as site needs to be adhered to. So they need to adhere to social distancing guidance. How can we expect staff to be able to do this and managers be able to assure clinical safety?
So I think the issue of devices has been a bit of a long-standing issue, and a lot of it relates to laptops and enabling teams to be able to work in an agile manner. Completely understand where everyone is coming from on that. I think, unfortunately, we are beholden to the situation that we're currently in. So laptops are like hotcakes at this moment in time. So trying to get sufficient quantities to everybody has been really, really difficult. But I do think that with the 250 laptops that we have received, that will alleviate a lot of the pressures that people are facing at this moment in time. And once those laptops are distributed out, then all the teams can facilitate in terms of social distancing, working remotely, and everything else that goes with it. And that hopefully will be starting from Monday. But apologies again for the delay that's happened, but it's something that's happening globally that we're also feeling at the moment.
Another question here, Jeff, on the issue of how we engage with our service users. And this is from Janet. Having a well-functioning tool for running interactive groups online is hugely important in psychology to help us continue to deliver our services. Attend Anywhere does not have the functionality that is needed. What progress has there been in identifying a suitable tool?
That's a very good question. So I think Attend Anywhere, the usage of that, I mean, it allows up to, I think, 8 participants on one particular session. And from the feedback that I've been receiving, it's quite variable in terms of the performance. So maybe in a one-to-one setting, it's a lot better. But then we've also got Microsoft Teams, which we're using now, that will allow up to 250 participants. But if you want to see a certain number of people on a screen, then Teams will allow you to see up to 9 people currently. The work that I alluded to earlier, which I'm doing with Dr. Loreen Hanna, that has yielded some fruit in the sense that we've identified that WebEx, for example, is a potential solution that works very similar to Zoom, and it allows you to see more participants on a screen. So if you're doing a group session of that kind, where you might need to see up to 25 people, then WebEx potentially is the solution that we could use to do that. So there will be some communications which will be coming out asking colleagues to actually help us to trial WebEx, because it may well be the way forward in terms of group work and any other clinical activities that are done on large numbers in that respect.
Thanks, Jeff. Sticking with this theme, if we may, someone has said, I have a laptop but still don't have Global Connect.
Okay, so I think the best way to actually deal with that would be to contact the IT help desk. So I do know that when Global Protect was launched, it was pushed out across the network, but there were some users who were unfortunately not able to pick up the actual update. So in a situation like that, the ICT team will be able to force that onto your laptop so that you can then start to use that and then get rid of Junos Pulse. So in a situation like that, if that is actually happening to a number of people, please do contact the IT help desk because they can force that on to your device remotely.
That's good advice. Thanks, Jeff. Someone has asked, will the increase in memory enable us to manage multiple applications being opened at the same time, such as Citrix, EMIS and Care Notes, as well as Dragon?
So that's one of the joys of having more memory. So it allows a lot more flexibility in terms of how you use the device. So you can do a lot of multitasking, using lots of different functionalities, dictation, and it just makes the experience a lot more seamless. Whereas on a device that's got 4 gigabytes of RAM, you're a bit restricted in terms of how much you can do at any one time. And you do actually notice the difference in terms of performance. But moving up to 8 gigabytes, you will feel a significant difference.
Okay, going back to the questions that we had in advance, Jeff, you're probably not able to answer this one definitively, but it is saying, can we have a guaranteed date by which all staff who need a Trust laptop and phone will be provided with one, and one that works?
So I think the IT team at myself, we're very poised to deliver as much as we can based on the availability that we have. So for me to give a very definitive guaranteed date, I think would be a bit difficult, especially in relation to the fact that we are looking to do a Windows 10 deployment from Monday as well. So we will be utilizing some of the equipment that we get back, refurbish it, and also then send that out as well. So I think we are looking to work quite quickly on this and turn things around as quickly as we can. But I think it'll be difficult for me to give a specific date at this moment in time.
Just coming back to the issue of Zoom, Jeff, which I know is quite a controversial one. Someone has said they're not convinced by the answer that we've given to the Zoom question. Other acute and mental health trusts continue to use it. Well, I do know from my own experience of talking to another chair in London about Zoom, who also used to be a tech expert, if I can use that term. He has very, very significant concerns about Zoom and its safety. And despite changes that have been made to Zoom recently, he's still not reassured by it. So I think there are some people who feel that there are enough safety mechanisms in place, and then there are others just not sufficiently assured.
Yeah, so just a point on this. I think there are a number of trusts who I know are still using Zoom as a platform, but equally because of the role that I undertake, I'm part of a Chief Information Officers network, and a number of my colleagues are actually looking to move away from Zoom because of the known issues involved. So Zoom have actually outlined a program of updates, which essentially will take them 3 months to actually complete. In that time, there are other security vulnerabilities that will also come up, which they would then have to mitigate again. So I think it is quite difficult in terms of the program that they've set out, because there's no guarantees that it will be watertight. And I think within CNI, we do need to look for a more watertight solution that will not have any risk for our patients, service users, or our staff. And that's, I think, the way that we really do need to go on it.
I must say, Jeff, I know nothing about technology, but what I've heard about Zoom makes me quite anxious. And I think when we know that there are security issues with it, bearing in mind our service users, then I think we have to proceed with great caution, which is what you are advising. So you'll like this one, Jeff. You'll like it a lot. It takes too long to get a response when we call the IT help desk, and then we have to wait days for a call back. Do you want to say anything about the performance of the help desk at the moment, Jeff?
So I think the help desk at this moment in time, there was a time when they were relatively understaffed because of isolation and other forms of sickness and everything else. But we do have a dedicated team who is actually working remotely as well. And we have had additional members of staff actually join the team as well. So you will start to find that calls are responded to in a much quicker fashion, emails are responded to in a much quicker fashion as well. And again, if there are any real concerns that people do have, please do raise it with me directly, and I will make sure that they get resolved as quickly as possible. But in terms of capacity, we do have capacity within the ICT team to deal with all the volume of calls that we are receiving. I think we did see in March in particular a very, very significant spike. So compared to last year, we had about 60% increase on the volume of calls that we would normally receive. And that did create quite a few challenges within IT, but we have mitigated a lot of those going forward, and we are in a much better position at this moment in time.
That's great to hear, Jeff. A question from Julia Gilliard. Outcome measures are a significant part of service evaluation and monitoring a client's clinical progress. Like IAPT, will the Trust subscribe to or provide platforms for digital collection of outcome measures such as Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey or Meridian?
So that's a really good question. So I think currently we have Meridian within the Trust, and in conversations that I've had with Dr. Loreen Hannah, we can actually start to make use of Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey to start getting some of that granular feedback. I think we're both quite keen to see more of that in use within the Trust. So I would actually be quite a bigger advocate to see more use of those particular platforms. And if anyone needs any assistance in setting up or anything like that, then please do let us know. But I think that is a very, very good way to go, and we're highly supportive of it.
Managing the queue of questions here, Jeff. So someone's asked, what's the rationale for having new laptops that don't actually fit the docking stations?
So in speaking to the Assistant Director of ICT, we are looking to do a bit of a hardware refresh as well. So where the docking stations do not fit the actual devices, we are looking to get new docking stations in so that it all fits quite nicely and enables people to work in quite a good way. So if anyone does have that particular issue and it hasn't been addressed, and again, please do let us know, and then we'll pick that up as part of the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Jeff. This question says, why have smart cards stopped working for Care Notes access? Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of that particular issue. It hasn't been flagged with me, but that's something that obviously I've just learned just now, so I can take that back to the team and work with our HR colleagues just to understand what the issue is. But I wasn't aware of that. That is a bit of a surprise to me.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeff. I think we'll just take one or two more before we get to the final question. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just struggling with the technology, Jeff. I've asked that question about Pulse and projects. Sorry, CNWL, where the CEO is the National Director of Mental Health, is using Zoom. So this is another Zoom one. Mm-hmm. They've checked out the IG and security of this and happy Zoom has improved. Is this something that we can discuss with CNWL and how they are managing the risks?
So I actually have spoken to the digital director at CNWL, and I know that is the approach that they're taking alongside other platforms as well. But I think he also recognizes the risks around Zoom in particular and some of the issues that can arise from that. So I'm in constant communication with him as a CIO colleague, but I still think that for CNI from a CNI perspective, I think the risks for us are quite significant to the point where it wouldn't really be advisable for us to continue using Zoom, hence the work that we're doing to find an alternative platform. And I know that my colleague at CNWL also has done that same piece of work as well.
Thanks, Jeff. So this isn't a question, you might be pleased to hear, but it is a comment. And it says, this is not a question, but if there is time, could you pass on my thanks to IT colleagues for the assistance they provided to me in setting up home working and resolving the odd glitch, such as my personal drive disappearing. A special thanks to Paulette Brown and Alex on the help desk. Both were fast, knowledgeable and efficient. I think that's a very good note to finish on, Jeff, isn't it?
It's beautiful. And yeah, I'm sure they've heard it themselves. I'm sure they're watching this. But yeah, that's absolutely great to hear. And I'll make sure that they hear that as well. Thank you.
Well, look, Jeff, thanks so much for answering those questions. Obviously, it's a topic where staff feel passionately about, and I think it's been fantastic having you here. And I'm sure you'll follow up on the odd question that we weren't aware of. Angela, can we come back to you for any final reflections before I wrap it up, please?
Thanks so much, Jackie. Thank you. Gosh, what a joy for me. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to just sit here and watch you take a barrage of questions where normally I feel more in the hot seat. So thank you so much. I want to just thank Jeff for coming and taking your questions. And I absolutely understand the frustration when you haven't got the IT that you need to do the job, or when there's a glitch with it and for some reason you can't get help quickly to respond to it. I've been there myself. Believe me, my colleagues will tell you I'm the one that's most likely to be standing by the window with the laptop threatening to throw it out. So I completely appreciate how frustrating it is. And I know that Jeff and his team are doing everything they can to get everybody working superbly well from home in that agile way. But I do want to finish with that shout out, because I do know that the IM&T team are working incredibly hard, and actually through this last month they've really had to deal with a barrage of inquiries and needs, and we've all been metaphorically shouting and yelling and banging on the table. So my thanks to them for their endless patience and response to that. I'm not going to say any more today, because I think, you know, we've had we wanted to have a focus on this. You asked for that. We've given you a focus on that. I know you're all in your teams at the moment doing your planning in terms of how more people can start to return to working within clinical settings, albeit in making sure that the social distancing and the other requirements can be met. And in many cases, that does mean that lots of us will continue to spend some time working from home. But I do know you're all working on that, and I'd really encourage you as teams, find the solutions that work for you. Tell us what you need to support those solutions, and we'll make sure that we do that. And I'm just going to end by saying yet again, thank you for working through these difficult times and these frustrations. And I look forward to having another conversation next week. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thanks, Angela. And if I could take the time to just echo the comments that Angela's made about Jeff and the team. The board pays particular interest in how queries around technology and laptops and the rest of it are being responded to, and also cybersecurity. And I have to say, Jeff responds with a great deal of skill, professionalism, and good humour, Jeff. So I very much appreciate that on behalf of the board. And I was just thinking what I might say this week by way of thanks to everyone. I'm sure, like the rest of you, you watched the news at the weekend with some degree of dismay around the guidance and what people should and shouldn't do. And in the madness of it all, I did think about colleagues here at CNI and how hard they've worked over the last few weeks. And I don't want that to be eroded in any single way. So whatever goes on in Westminster and elsewhere, you carry on doing the absolutely brilliant, fantastic job that you do every single day, because that saves lives and it keeps people safe. And that's what I want to remember. So thank you again for everything that you do. And we look forward to seeing you next week, probably without Jeff. Bye from me.
Bye.